What's up gamers, Dreamcastguy here, and this is my brutally honest review of Star Wars Squadrons. Now I think it's important to actually start this video off with a little bit of a confession, which is that I don't really consider myself to be much of a Star Wars fan anymore. I used to like the movies back in the day, I read a lot of the comics and stuff, but these later movies like Last Jedi and stuff, they just weren't really my flavor. So I kind of have fallen out of love of this universe, but I wanted to take a look at this game and see how it stands just on its own. Can this be a fun experience even if you don't care about all the lore and characters, names, and planets? Well, surprisingly, yes. I mean, the biggest takeaway of this game is I'm kind of impressed just how fun this manages to be, even if you are just going in and hoping for a fun series of space battles. Now, that is actually important to note. This has no ground combat. This doesn't really have a lot of like running around in ships. The only thing you do in Star Wars Squadrons is giant space battles, dogfights, you in a ship versus somebody else in a ship, and the last person alive is the winner. And I have to say that for how focused this game is, it does at times feel a bit tiny. But I want to talk about that in a second. Let's start off with the story mode. Now, in my opinion, the story mode definitely exists as a way of trying to introduce all the different mechanics. It's decent, it's nice. You do more than just follow different like scenes from the movies. The story is a new original tale set in the Star Wars universe that kind of shows us a different perspective of the eternal battle between the rebels and the Empire. And I don't think it does anything particularly amazing. It's not like it's super well written, but it's a good introduction to all the different mechanics we're going to be using. And it's important because honestly, there is a lot to these ships. This is not a game that you can just instantly jump into, press a couple buttons and know the mechanics in 10 minutes. It takes some practice to be good at this game, but that's part of why I found myself kind of loving it. I kept wanting to play, not just because I think the graphics are kind of jaw-dropping and it's cool to be out in space. To me, the biggest appeal to this game is just the moment-to-moment flight combat. Now let's break down how these fights work, because this is of course the major mechanic is the gameplay. Gameplay is king. In this there are 4 separate ships that can be played by the Empire and 4 separate ships that can be played by the Rebel Alliance. And while it may sound small to only have 8 total vehicles in this game, they all at least feel good. Now in a lot of these dogfights, tactical placement is pretty much the biggest thing. You of course do have things like homing missiles, you have your shields, you have your booster jets, and you have your basic laser fire. But what's important here is where you're at. More than just how you're shooting your enemy, more than just being able to get that lock on. The biggest weapon in this game is definitely where you are at, because if you're able to try and sneak behind a piece of wreckage or swoop in between some asteroids and a giant belt of debris or something, you are going to live. Now as I'm playing this, let's take a look at these different ships. I don't want to break them down one by one because they're kind of what you would expect. Either slower ships that have more armor or faster ships that are able to do damage and dash away. But what's really important here is actually the different ship modes. So while you're flying, by pressing different buttons on the D-pad, you can switch the general functionality to make it where your ship only has a certain amount of power in it. So you can just say, I want to have extra shields. You can put it in something like speed mode. This makes it where you have extra agility, so you can fly faster and turn a lot quicker, but you can't fire as much. And of course there is just laser mode, which has you in the hyper offensive mode that lets you shoot and recharge your lasers incredibly quick, but you're going to do this at the cost of having less defense. Now that may sound like you're just flipping a couple dials and stuff and it's not going to really change combat, but it does. These different modes are a huge thing that you need to practice, because if you're able to either outrun your opponent, switch to defensive mode and wait until your party can come help you out, you need to constantly be aware of which situation fits which style of play. Now let's talk more about this online multiplayer in a general sense, because this is definitely where the game shines the brightest, is that there are these online dogfights where you can go in here and just go against some random people, level up, unlock new special gear for your ships, and then jump right back into the battles. Now, if you want, there is an option to do some player versus AI matches. These are where there will be like huge enemy cruiser ships, and you have to try and fly in there and take them down carefully before you all get blown up. And these are fun. I think these are a good way to try and like test out your abilities if you've just customized your ship and you want to see how this new set of armor or something is going to work. I think that this is an effective place for it, but where this game is the most fun is in the PvP, the player versus player ship battles, and that's what I'm showing you the most of here because that's where this game is obviously best. Now, when you're in these, the main thing you need to try and practice is not just flying around, not just being able to survive on your own and keep your wits aware, but also being able to do some careful callouts. But this does bring me to the biggest downside of the game, which is that when you're playing these online game modes, they're heavily based around kill counts. Whoever's able to blow up the most of the enemy ships wins, right? That's pretty obvious. But the thing is that it's easy to bully bad players. Because this game is rather complicated and because you do need to really experiment to figure out how your ship is going to fly or the best way to try and flip between modes, it's very, very easy to see the bad players and just kill them again and again and again. There were a lot of matches where I'd see one player on the enemy team who kind of sucked and we could just practically spawn camp them. Because they start in a particular zone of the map, you can just wait there and kill them again and again. It doesn't seem like there's any spawn shielding. The second you're alive, you can immediately enter combat again, which unfortunately makes it very, very simple to get some fast wins by just targeting the bad players. If somebody is good at evading and they constantly keep zipping away, just disengage. Go and find the slow guy who completely sucks and murder him 20 times and instantaneously win. I found myself at times during these online matches almost having to babysit the bad players because the only way I had a chance of winning is constantly protecting them. And this goes beyond just trying to give them advice. Sometimes I would have to actually just literally follow them around the map, shooting whoever is shooting them. And while this does work, I wish that there was more of a training aspect of this. I wish that there was something in this game that maybe tested your skills a little bit more before you were even allowed to jump into the online modes. I think some people just went straight into multiplayer because that's the point of the game itself, and they just suck. I mean, this game is clearly not doing enough to train people because some of these people are straight up garbage. Now, the other downside of this game is I do wish the story was conveyed in a little bit of a different way. The single player is fun. I think that the cutscenes, the graphics, the visuals, they're all very impressive. But a lot of the best dialogue isn't even in the cutscenes themselves. It actually is just the times when you're in the starship, there are optional times where you can stop and talk to the different pilots. And this is the only time where there's some really impressive storytelling. It's annoying to me that the only time I really get a chance to appreciate this writing is when it's just an expedition dump, when somebody's just giving me a speech about, oh, I used to be a track racer and now I've joined the resistance to save the galaxy. Okay, that's cool and stuff, but why isn't this a cutscene? Why isn't this a mission? Why aren't we getting a chance to appreciate this aspect of the Star Wars universe instead of making it just a tiny little side thing? This is a minor complaint because essentially the story is still in there. It's just not as much at the forefront as I think it should be. For the most part, this game is very, very good. I actually think it was a very smart idea to make this so cheap. This is only $40, whereas here in America, obviously most games are $60. The reduced cost, I think, definitely fits this experience. It's really interesting and it's a nice little taste of what might be a bigger style of Star Wars in the future, but I definitely don't think it deserves to be full price. This is a tinier game that's more focused, it's more centered, and it's for a typical demographic. If you're just somebody that's wanting some dogfights, who's wanting to see a little bit of crazy explosions in outer space, this is definitely for you. But if you're hoping for something that manages to combine different play styles, you might want to check out something like Star Wars Battlefront 2. This does not have any microtransactions in it as of yet. yet. I haven't seen any crappy loot crates, and I don't know if they're going to be added in the future, but I don't get a feeling they are. I think that this is a straight up, legit, honest game that's not trying to screw us over, at least yet. You can never trust EA. Okay, so we've heard some good and some bad, but let's go over the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Star Wars Squadrons an 8 out of 10. Thanks so much for watching this video, everybody. If you could, please give this video a like, and if you want, please subscribe. It was really fun to kind of go back to the Star Wars universe, and while I'm still not particularly like a diehard fan of this stuff, it's nice to see it being treated with respect. Clearly, these developers really kind of care, and I appreciate that. Well, alright, I'm out of here. If you guys could just do me a giant favor and keep dreaming. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.